No, I did not kill Alexis Murphy or hurt Alexis Murphy.
Do you know where she is?
No, sir, I do not.
And do you know what happened to her?
No, sir, I do not.
It's like my heart just been ripped out. My heart been ripped out.
It's been 6 days since Alexis Murphy disappeared from a gas station near Charlottesville.
The 17-year-old's car has since been found, but no sign of Alexis. Now, time is of the essence, and the FBI is hoping surveillance pictures will help speed up the search.
The summer of 2013 was a time of bright promise for Alexis Tiara Murphy. At 17 years old, she was on the verge of her senior year at Nelson County High School in Livingston, Virginia, a small rural community where families were deeply rooted and knew their neighbors. Alexis was a vibrant and familiar face in that community. She was known for her infectious laugh, her keen sense of fashion, and her meticulous attention to her hair. Her social media was a reflection of her personality, full of selfies, updates about her day, and interactions with a wide circle of friends. She was deeply embedded in the digital world of a modern teenager, constantly connected through texts and tweets. Beyond her social life, Alexis was a beloved daughter, granddaughter, and sister. Her family, particularly her mother, Laura Murphy, and her grandfather, described a close-knit and loving home life. She was ambitious, with plans to attend college after graduation, and dreams of a career that would allow her to express her creativity. The future seemed clear, an open road leading to new experiences and the adventures of young adulthood. Also, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? What city are you in? And what's the time and weather like where you are right now? It's always interesting to hear how this story reaches people all over the world. I'm really happy you're here with me. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new stories. August 3, 2013, began as a perfectly ordinary Saturday. The air was thick with the late summer heat of Central Virginia. Inside the Murphy home, the focus was on the upcoming school year. Alexis had a specific plan for the day. First, she was heading to a salon in nearby Lynchburg to get her hair done, a final touch before her senior portraits. After that, she intended to drive to Charlottesville, about an hour away, to do some back-to-school shopping and find a new dress for a night out with friends. That morning, she followed the familiar family routine. She exchanged "I love yous" with her mother and grandmother before walking out the door.
My jacket never wants to go right. Still ain't right.
Saturday, August 3rd, 2013. Alexis Murphy tweeted "Bergbound." 17-year-old had plans to shop in Lynchburg. Alexis never returned home. On Sunday, August 4th, her family alerted the Nelson County Sheriff's Office.
Completely out of character for her. If she was going to miss her curfew or be late for her curfew, she would have called and said, "I'm going to be late."
Law enforcement started searching by land and air.
Usually when a teenager is called in missing.
Just before 7:00 p.m., she posted on Twitter, mentioning her hair plans and her trip to Charlottesville. It was a simple, public declaration of a teenager's weekend plans, broadcast to her friends and followers without a second thought. She climbed into her white 2003 Nissan Maxima, a car that was her symbol of freedom and a common sight on the roads around Nelson County. For her family, it was just another Saturday. Alexis was responsible and always checked in. They had no reason to believe this day would be any different from the countless others before it. The simple errand, a rite of passage for a teenager preparing for a new school year, was an event defined by its absolute normalcy. But how could a day that started with such familiar, happy routines end in a silence that would soon consume an entire community? The evening of Saturday, August 3rd, began to bleed into the night, and a sense of unease settled over the Murphy household. Alexis was a conscientious teenager who understood her family's rules. She was expected to be home by her 11:00 p.m. curfew, and if her plans changed, she always called. As the clock ticked past that deadline with no word, initial parental annoyance began to curdle into genuine concern. Laura Murphy started the routine every parent in her situation does. She called Alexis's cell phone. The calls went straight to voicemail, each unanswered ring amplifying the growing anxiety. Laura then began calling Alexis's friends, her voice growing tighter with each conversation. The responses were all the same. No one had seen her since that afternoon. No one knew where she was. The planned night out for which she was supposedly buying a dress had never materialized. The digital connection that was so central to Alexis's life had gone dark. Her active Twitter feed was static. Her phone, an extension of her own hand, was silent. For a teenager so constantly online, this digital void was a significant deviation from her established patterns of behavior. By 11:30 p.m., the concern had escalated into outright panic. This was more than just a teenager missing a curfew. This was completely out of character. The family made the decision that no parent wants to make. They called the Nelson County Sheriff's Office to report Alexis Tiara Murphy as a missing person. The initial response from law enforcement was guided by standard procedure. Runaway cases are common, and officers are trained to consider this possibility first. However, the Murphy family was adamant. Alexis was not a runaway. She had her hair appointment money, deep family ties, and was excited about her senior year. There was no conflict at home, no reason for her to leave. Their insistence, and the unusual circumstances, the complete lack of communication, persuaded deputies to take the report with heightened seriousness. An alert was issued. Her name, description, and the details of her white Nissan Maxima were entered into law enforcement databases. The official search began in the pre-dawn hours of Sunday, August 4th. The family's frantic private search transformed into an official investigation. As word spread through Livingston and the surrounding counties, a wave of fear rippled through the community. A local girl, one of their own, had vanished. The question on everyone's mind was simple and terrifying. Where was Alexis? With the dawn of Sunday, August 4th, the search for Alexis Murphy escalated into a full-scale, multi-agency operation. The Nelson County Sheriff's Office, recognizing the potential gravity of the situation, quickly requested assistance. The Virginia State Police brought in advanced investigative resources, and soon, the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the effort, contributing manpower and technical expertise. A unified command post was established as the case was designated high priority. The initial phase of the investigation focused on the only solid information they had: Alexis's own digital footprint. Investigators immediately pulled her social media records. Her final tweet, sent at 7:09 p.m. on Saturday, became a critical piece of the timeline. It read, "Chillin' in my car, in Lynchburg, going to da hair salon, then to Seville. I'm so bored." This post confirmed her intended itinerary. Yet, as detectives began analyzing her cell phone data, a troubling contradiction emerged. After obtaining an emergency warrant, they learned from her service provider that the last signal from Alexis's iPhone had registered with a cell tower in Livingston, her hometown, not Lynchburg or Charlottesville. This crucial piece of data suggested that after her tweet, her phone had traveled back toward her home, a significant deviation from her stated plans. While the technical teams analyzed the phone records, a massive ground search was underway. Law enforcement and a growing army of civilian volunteers scoured the back roads and wooded areas of Nelson County. Flyers bearing Alexis's smiling face became a ubiquitous sight in storefront windows and on community bulletin boards. The search for her white Nissan Maxima was a top priority. A "Be on the lookout," or BOLO alert, was broadcast to law enforcement agencies across Virginia and neighboring states. On Tuesday, August 6th, the alert yielded a result. A patrol officer located the Nissan Maxima, not in Livingston, but exactly where Alexis had said she was going: Charlottesville. It was parked in the sprawling lot of the Carmike 6 movie theater at the Seminole Square Shopping Center. The discovery of the car was a double-edged sword for investigators. It confirmed part of her plan was executed, but it deepened the mystery surrounding the phone ping. The vehicle was unlocked, and an initial inspection revealed no obvious signs of foul play or a struggle inside. Her phone and purse were missing. The car being there while her phone's last signal was miles away in Livingston created a perplexing geographical puzzle. The journey was fractured. Alexis had started her day, tweeted her plans, but somewhere between that message and her car being abandoned in Charlottesville, something had gone terribly wrong. Investigators now had a critical timeline gap, and the key to solving her disappearance, they suspected, was located in that contradictory signal from Livingston. The discovery of Alexis Murphy's Nissan Maxima in Charlottesville created a jarring geographical contradiction for investigators. Her car was in one city, yet her phone's last signal was registered miles away in her hometown of Livingston. To solve the puzzle of her disappearance, detectives had to reconstruct her movements and bridge that gap. Their strategy was methodical. They would retrace the path along Route 29, the main artery connecting the two locations, and scrutinize every possible point of contact. This meant painstakingly collecting and reviewing surveillance footage from businesses along the highway. Their attention quickly focused on the Liberty gas station in Lovingston. It was a well-trafficked location, situated directly on Route 29, and critically, it was in the immediate vicinity of where Alexis's cell phone had last pinged the local tower. On August 7th, investigators secured the station's surveillance recordings from the evening of August 3rd. As they methodically scanned through the hours of grainy, time-stamped video, their painstaking work paid off. There, pulling up to the entrance, was Alexis's white Nissan Maxima. The footage provided a chilling, silent narrative of what might have been her final public moments. At approximately 7:15 p.m., Alexis is seen entering the gas station's convenience store. A few moments later, a man with a distinct beard and wearing a camouflage shirt is seen holding the door open for her as she exits. They appear to engage in a brief conversation. There are no visible signs of distress or coercion in the footage. The interaction, to an outside observer, appears casual. Alexis then gets back into her car. The man is seen gesturing toward her vehicle, and after a moment, she drives out of the camera's view. Investigators now had a face, a crucial person of interest, who was undeniably one of the last people to interact with Alexis. But who was he? They showed the images to the store clerks, one of whom recognized the man as a regular customer. They knew his name, Randy Allen Taylor. A quick check of law enforcement records provided an address. Taylor, 48 years old, lived in a camper trailer on a plot of land off US 29, not far from the gas station itself. With this identification, the entire focus of the investigation shifted. They were no longer just searching for a missing girl, they were pursuing a tangible lead. The timeline now had a new critical data point, and the investigation had a name. The next logical step was to pay a visit to Randy Taylor and find out what he knew about his brief encounter with Alexis Murphy. Armed with the surveillance footage and the name Randy Allen Taylor, investigators made their way to his known address on August 8th. The property was located just off Route 29, a short distance from the Liberty gas station. Taylor lived in a weathered camper trailer, a small, isolated dwelling that stood in stark contrast to the surrounding Virginia countryside. When detectives approached him, Taylor was cooperative, readily admitting that he had seen Alexis Murphy at the gas station. He began to weave a detailed story, an account that would become the foundation of his defense and, ultimately, his undoing. Taylor claimed that the encounter was innocent. He alleged that Alexis had approached him to ask about his customized vehicle and that he had mentioned a mutual acquaintance who dealt marijuana. According to his initial statement, they went back to his trailer, smoked marijuana together, and that she was unharmed when she left. He claimed she departed with another man, a black male in his early 20s, whom he knew only as Drew or Dre, who was supposedly driving a dark-colored Chevy. He provided a phone number for this individual. However, when investigators checked the number, it was registered to a man in another state who had no connection to the case. Taylor's story, while providing an explanation for his presence, contained inconsistencies that raised immediate suspicion. His shifting details and the dead-end phone number provided investigators with enough probable cause to secure a search warrant for his camper and property. They now faced a critical question. Would a search of his property confirm his seemingly helpful account, or would it expose a lie? A specialized forensic team was dispatched to execute the warrant. They began a meticulous, inch-by-inch search of the small, cluttered living space inside the camper. It was here that the investigation pivoted from a missing person case to a homicide investigation. Inside, they found several small but damning pieces of physical evidence. A search of the bedroom area revealed a torn, bloody t-shirt. On a piece of carpet, they discovered a single, broken artificial fingernail. Its design later matched to the ones Alexis was known to wear. They also located a human hair, caught on a blue plaid shirt. The most significant discovery, however, was a tiny diamond stud, pried loose from its setting. Alexis Murphy's family confirmed she had a similar diamond stud on her cell phone case, which was still missing. These items were carefully bagged, tagged, and rushed to the state forensic lab for analysis. The results were definitive and irrefutable. DNA extracted from the human hair was a positive match to Alexis Murphy. The DNA found on the broken fingernail also belonged to her. The circumstantial evidence was now backed by forensic certainty. Pieces of Alexis herself had been found inside Randy Taylor's home. Confronted with this physical evidence, Taylor's story began to crumble under questioning. His account of the evening's events shifted, and his credibility evaporated. On August 11, 2013, just 8 days after Alexis vanished, Randy Allen Taylor was arrested and charged with her abduction. The camper had given up its secrets, providing the physical proof that linked him directly to her disappearance. In May 2014, 9 months after Alexis Murphy vanished, Randy Allen Taylor was brought before a Nelson County court to stand trial. The legal challenge facing the prosecution, led by Commonwealth's attorney Anthony Martin, was immense. They were tasked with proving not only that Taylor had abducted Alexis, but that he had murdered her, all without the most fundamental piece of evidence in a homicide case: the victim's body. The entire case rested on a meticulously constructed pyramid of circumstantial and forensic evidence, and the prosecution had to ensure it was strong enough to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. The trial began, with the prosecution laying out its timeline of events. The jury was shown the now infamous surveillance footage from the Liberty gas station, the last time Alexis was verifiably seen alive, in the company of the accused. The prosecution then methodically introduced the evidence recovered from Taylor's trailer. Forensic experts testified about the DNA analysis, explaining that the hair found on a shirt and the genetic material from the torn fingernail were a conclusive match to Alexis Murphy. Family members took the stand, providing emotional but crucial testimony, identifying the unique design of the broken nail as identical to those Alexis wore. They also confirmed that her cell phone, which was never recovered, had been decorated with a distinctive diamond stud, just like the one found on Taylor's carpet. A central pillar of the prosecution's case was Taylor's own words. Investigators detailed his evolving and contradictory statements. They presented his initial, fabricated story about the man named Dree, or Drew, and showed the jury how the phone number he provided was a dead end, a clear attempt to mislead the investigation. The prosecution argued that these lies were not the actions of an innocent witness, but rather demonstrated a clear consciousness of guilt. Why invent a person, they asked, unless you were trying to conceal the truth of what really happened in that trailer? The defense, in turn, argued that the prosecution's case was built on assumption. They conceded that Alexis had been in Taylor's camper, but insisted there was no definitive proof that she had been harmed there, let alone killed. They clung to Taylor's story, portraying him as a misguided man who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Randy Taylor chose to testify in his own defense. On the stand, he repeated his claim that he and Alexis had smoked marijuana, and that she had left his trailer unharmed with the mysterious Dre. Under a grueling cross-examination by Anthony Martin, Taylor's story began to fray. He was unable to provide any verifiable details about this other man. He could not explain how Alexis's DNA-laden fingernail was torn off inside his trailer, nor could he offer a plausible reason for the presence of her hair and the diamond from her phone. His demeanor was reportedly inconsistent, and his account failed to withstand the logical scrutiny of the prosecution. After a week of testimony, the case went to the jury. The question was clear. Did the sum of the evidence, the video, the lies, the hair, the nail, the diamond equal murder? The deliberation was remarkably swift. After less than 2 hours, the jury returned. They found Randy Allen Taylor guilty on all counts: first-degree murder committed during the act of an abduction, abduction with intent to defile, and 2 alternative counts of second-degree murder. The verdict was a landmark legal victory, proving that justice could be secured even in the devastating absence of a body. On July 23, 2014, 2 months after the jury delivered its guilty verdict, Randy Allen Taylor returned to the Nelson County courtroom for sentencing. The atmosphere was heavy, with the weight of a legal conclusion that offered no emotional closure. For the Murphy family, this day was not about vengeance, but about accountability for the man who had irrevocably fractured their lives, yet refused to give them the one thing they desperately needed: the location of Alexis's body. Taylor remained silent, offering no statement and showing no remorse. It was left to the judge to speak to the gravity of his crimes. The judge handed down the maximum possible punishment: 2 consecutive life sentences, ensuring that Randy Taylor would spend the remainder of his natural life in prison. In his pronouncement, the judge condemned Taylor's calculated actions and his profound lack of compassion, not only for the crime itself, but for his continued refusal to ease the family's suffering. The legal battle was over, but for the Murphy family, the most agonizing chapter was just beginning. The wait. What does a family do when they have a conviction but no closure? For Laura Murphy and her family, the years that followed the trial were a unique form of torment. They lived in a state of suspended grief. They had a conviction, a legal declaration of what had happened, but they did not have Alexis. They could not lay her to rest, could not visit a grave, could not have a final memorial. Every day was a reminder of her absence, an open wound that could not begin to heal. Refusing to let their daughter become a forgotten statistic, the Murphy family channeled their pain into action. They became tireless advocates, determined to keep Alexis's name and story in the public consciousness. They gave interviews, participated in documentaries, and maintained a social media presence dedicated to her memory and the ongoing search. They worked closely with law enforcement, regularly checking in for any updates or new leads. Their persistence was a testament to their love for Alexis, a promise that they would never, ever stop looking for her. While Randy Taylor sat in prison, maintaining his innocence and offering no information, the Murphys organized and participated in community searches, following up on any credible tip, no matter how remote. The community of Nelson County, and indeed a wider network of supporters, rallied around them. Anniversaries of her disappearance were marked with vigils and remembrances. The case became a symbol of a community's shared loss and resilience. The legal system had provided what justice it could, but only Randy Taylor held the key to true resolution, and he remained silent. Years passed. 2015, 2016, 2017. With each passing year, the hope of finding Alexis waned for many, but never for her family. They lived with the dual reality of knowing who was responsible while being haunted by the great unknown of where she was. The verdict was a fact. The sentences were being served, but the search for Alexis Murphy was far from over. For more than 7 years, Randy Taylor's silence held the Murphy family hostage. While the legal system had provided a conviction, the emotional resolution remained locked away with him in prison. Then, in late 2020, something shifted. Investigators received new, credible information regarding the possible location of Alexis's remains. While the specific source of this intelligence has not been publicly disclosed by authorities, it was specific enough to justify a renewed and highly targeted search effort, focusing on a piece of private property just off Route 29 in Lovingston. After 7 years of silence, a critical question remained. Would this finally be the lead that brought Alexis home? On December 3, 2020, investigators descended on the property. The search was slow and methodical. Finally, after hours of painstaking work, they made a discovery. Human remains were unearthed. The area was immediately secured as a crime scene, and a state forensic anthropology team was called in to carefully excavate and recover the evidence. For the Murphy family, this news initiated another torturous wait, as the remains were sent to the chief medical examiner's office in Richmond for formal identification. 2 months later, on February 5, 2021, the confirmation came. Through dental records and DNA analysis, the remains were positively identified as those of Alexis Tiara Murphy. The official announcement, made on February 17th, brought an end to the 7.5-year search. The family's reaction was a complex mixture of profound grief and overwhelming relief. The devastating finality of her death was now a concrete reality, yet with it came the end of a torturous uncertainty. They could finally bring their daughter home. In a statement, they expressed their gratitude to law enforcement and their supporters, saying, "Our family is grieving, and we ask for prayers and privacy at this very difficult time." The discovery of Alexis cemented her lasting legacy, which extends far beyond the memory of the bright girl from Nelson County. Her case directly prompted legislative change in Virginia. In 2014, the Alexis Murphy Law was enacted. Recognizing that the criteria for an Amber Alert did not apply to many endangered missing persons over the age of 17, this law established a new system. It allows for the immediate public dissemination of information, similar to an Amber Alert, for any abducted individual, regardless of age, for whom law enforcement believes their life is in danger. Furthermore, her trial remains a landmark case for the Virginia judiciary, a powerful example of how a no-body murder prosecution can succeed through the meticulous presentation of digital and forensic evidence. It set a precedent that has been studied by prosecutors across the state. After a private funeral service, Alexis Murphy was finally laid to rest, bringing a somber closure to a story that began with a simple trip for school supplies. Her family's unwavering perseverance ensured that she was never just a case file, and their fight for answers ultimately brought her on the long road home.